and this is chapter 32. Mud, glorious mud. Hello friends, it's lovely to have you here with me at Riverwood Cabin. I'm Rosie Boom and I'm reading to you from Where Lions Roar at Night, the first book in the Barn Chronicles series. And this is chapter 32. Mud, glorious mud. The days were getting longer and warmer, and the river beckoned the children every morning. Mum told them that they had to have finished all their chores before they could even think about going down there before school. One morning, Millie told the boys to hurry up and do their jobs extra fast. It had rained in the night and the river was quite high. They got into their togs and slipped out the back door. Wonderful puddles lay all over the ground. They jumped into them and squealed as the cold water splashed up their legs. Then they ran across Smoking Bridge and made their way over Black Rabbit Island to Cair Paravel. The riverbank there had a gentle slope into the water with a few well-positioned bumps, and it became a fantastic mudslide after heavy rain. Angel barked excitedly as they took turns running at the slope and then sliding on their bottoms into the river. The bank became muddier and more slippery, and the rides got faster and faster. Their togs all turned a chocolate brown colour. They laughed and giggled and threw mud at each other. Then they scooped up handfuls of the warm, sludgy mud and rubbed it over their faces. Just then they heard Mum calling, "School time!" "Uh-oh," said Millie. They looked up and saw her walking towards them across Black Rabbit Island. "Oh boy," said Mum when she saw them. "I knew it. I could hear you laughing and squealing from the barn. How did I guess I'd find you looking like this?" Millie gave her a muddy smile. "Because it's what you would have done when you were a child?" Mum tried not to smile. "I should be cross with you, but I guess it's not every day you get to have a mudslide like this." "Anyway," added Jake, "we did make our beds and do all our jobs before we came here." Said Mum, "but we're not going to get to start school on time, are we?" Then she pulled the camera out of her pocket and said, "Let's get some good photos anyway. Then you'd all better have a bath. Your lips look blue. But wash most of the mud off in the river first." No one wanted to wait their turn to warm up in the bath, so they kept their togs on and climbed in together. Mum brought Little House on the Prairie into the bathroom and read the next chapter while they warmed up in the bath. It was an exciting chapter about the family crossing a flooded river in the wagon and Pa having to jump in and swim with the horses. "How appropriate," murmured Mum when she finished. "Flooded rivers and mud and wet clothes." Then she got up and filled the washing machine with brown togs and towels. Later that morning, a Land Rover drove past the barn and down into the meadow. "It's the tree fellas!" shouted Sam. They all ran outside and down to the river near Lantern Waste. 5 huge macrocarpa trees stood along their boundary fence, and Dad had decided a while ago that they needed to be cut down. They were scrappy trees, and whenever a strong wind blew, they dropped some of their big branches. Besides clearing the area up, Dad hoped they might get some usable timber out of the trees for the house building. He said that would be the icing on the cake. The skidder soon arrived on the back of a small truck. The men carefully inspected the trees. They told Dad that the trees were all leaning over the river and they would need to use the heavy machinery to make sure they fell the other way into the meadow. The children sat on the bonnet of the jeep at a safe distance and watched one of the men climb right up into the very top of the first tree. He looked like a small possum sitting way up there in the branches. "How does he do that?" asked Sam in an awed voice. "Practice," answered Millie. "I don't think I'd like to go that high." "I think it'd be cool," said Millie. "Me too," agreed Jake. The man finished tying the chain around the trunk and then climbed back down. For the next 20 minutes, the meadow rang with the sound of his chainsaw as he made careful cuts at the base of the tree. Millie blocked her ears after a while. She couldn't understand how Dad could call the sound of a chainsaw music to his ears. At last the man was finished. The skidder driver connected the end of the chain to a long wire rope attached to the winch on the big skidder. "Everyone well away?" asked the first man. Dad checked where the children were and gave him the thumbs up. "Ready?" the man called to the skidder driver. Mum arrived just in time with the video camera. The winch began to turn and the chain wriggled like a snake and then grew tight. The tree fella started his saw again and made the final cut to the base of the tree. There was a long creaking and cracking noise, and slowly the tree began to topple. "Timber!" yelled Mum. The ground shook as the tree smashed onto it. Billows of dust flew into the sky. Everyone clapped and cheered. By afternoon tea time, the men had felled all 5 trees. At one end of the meadow, a massive pile of branches was piled into a stack, ready to burn. Dad had asked the men to drag the logs for milling over towards the house site, and all the other logs to the place where his firewood piles were. "That'll take you a while to cut and split," said one of the men. The children looked at each other and groaned. More firewood. Dad gave him a cheerful smile. "Yes, but I've got a great team to help me. Now, will you come down to the river and have a look at a couple more logs? There's a few totara logs that have been lying across the river, probably for years, but they may have good wood in them." "Don't take all our bridges!" Millie didn't like the sound of all this clean-up talk. "We need them to play our games." Dad smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, we'll leave you some." The children followed the men down to Beaver's Bank. A long totara log lay across the river and halfway up the bank, covered by at least 30 centimetres of earth and grass. The men examined it and then said it looked like it would be worth milling. They tied the chain around its girth, and then the skidder roared into life and began to pull. With a deep groan that went on and on, the log began to rise from the earth like a prehistoric monster. Dirt and grass fell away as it woke from hibernation and began to slither across the bank and between the trees and out into the meadow. Millie turned to Mum. "That was so cool! It looked like it was alive." It sure did. I wonder how long it had been sleeping there for. The next log to join the others was a small tariri tree that had fallen on Black Rabbit Island. Then the men dragged out a huge log from the river near Cair Paravel and a massive gum that had fallen in the July storm. By the time they left, 17 logs lay on the meadow, ready for milling. The children climbed all over them and tried to leap from one to another. "Leap log," laughed Dad. Then his face grew serious. "Be careful though, kids. You could easily hurt yourselves on these logs." Mum came up behind him and gave him a hug. "Pleased?" Dad nodded. but I'll be even more pleased if we get some decent timber out of them. He massaged his bandaged fingers and tried to wriggle them around. I wish my jolly fingers were working properly. They feel so stiff. Seeing all that firewood sitting there, waiting to be chainsawed up, makes me feel impatient. Milly stopped running along one of the logs and felt a pang of remorse. If only she hadn't been so impatient for her hen house. Then she heard Dad laugh. But look at them, Rose. 17 logs. They look like a pod of beached whales lying there on the meadow. Milly jumped from the log and ran over to him. Which whale will be for my bedroom, Dad? He laughed and ruffled her already messy hair. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Milly jumped from the log and ran over to him. Which whale will be for my bedroom, Dad? He laughed and ruffled her already messy hair. Who knows? We'll just have to wait